Okay, so these activities today, remember they'll be in component 1 and component 2. And what our aim for today's lesson is once more to recognise more facts and be able to look at advantages and disadvantages of different sources of finance and begin to draw up a picture that will allow them to decide on their appropriateness. And it'll also, because it gives you some clues as to what to write, you might find that you try to develop your writing skill. I will say that if you don't finish this video, you need to finish it in order to for next Monday, because we only have one lesson next week, and that will then mean that we can try some more exam style questions on this next week. Okay, so the first thing that I need you to get out is the sources of finance, the little booklet, the activity booklet. So I'm actually counting my pages now, and it's the 5th side in, and I need you to read this case study called Packed Munches. So pause the video now and have a quick read. Okay, so at the end of the business it says she needs an injection of finance, and that's what the questions are going to be around first of all today. So you've got a little history. If you turn over the page, the first question that we're going to do is we're going to look at question 2, which says, in order to finance the business better and capitalise on the growing demand, Fiona has stated that she needs an injection of finance. So the first activity asks you to rank the sources of finance from 1 to 5, 1 being the most preferred and 5 being your least preferable. So I've given you a head start because I've given you 5 separate ideas that you need to look at. So I'm going to say to you, before you put pen to paper in 1 to 5, you can see the questions that are below it asks you about your reasons and any consequences. So this would be a good minute to get your notes out again, to look at the grid on the front, or to refer to the page in your yellow book and try and determine which logical choice you have before you start moving the video on. Okay, so when I looked at this activity, I tried to think on some of the positives and the negatives. Now, I personally decided that Fiona would be able to meet this requirement by using a bank overdraft. So you may or you may not have agreed with that, but remember, a bank overdraft is short term in terms of theory, although in practice many businesses will have a bank overdraft to allow them to pay the day-to-day bills. And it's little clues like in the case study it says she needs to purchase large amounts of stocks weeks in advance for them being shipped abroad, but then she sells them fairly quickly after that. So really it's a fluctuating thing, and although I'm going to have to pay interest on it, you pay interest on the overdraft amount. So if I've only got a little amount of the overdraft being used, I'll pay a smaller amount of interest, and if I use a larger amount of the overdraft when I place my order, obviously my interest cost will be more expensive. So the next part that we're going to use, I'm going to tell you that you have to use an overdraft for the next part. Okay, so we're going to slightly rephrase this because I think there are so many clues in this case study that points to an overdraft. I'm going to say that this is the method. The only other option that you might use was personal finance, and it basically tells you in the case study she used it all up, she has nothing left. And really, she likes to work on by herself. I very much doubt that she wants to invest in get some shareholders. And really, you've got to question the LTD, that's the private limited company, should have to get friends and family to invest, and I'm not altogether sure about that. I don't think her business is risky enough for a venture capital to a venture capitalist to invest. I think that the return, the size of her business is negligible for them, and I don't think she would pick a bank loan because I think it's an ongoing problem. I don't think it's a quick fix. So when we look at this, we're going to try and look at exam structure. So it says, explain in the space below your reasoning for your number one choice of finance. So what would I ask you to do in that? I want you to find a definition. Remember, these are the things. It's absolutely vital, and I can almost certainly tell you, without referring back to the theory book, the student's definition of an overdraft is questionable at times. So take a minute, go back. I didn't say you couldn't word it in your own words, but the emphasis on the bank allowing you to borrow more money has to be there. And for me, in order to be sort of convincing you it's my reason, I want you to think of it, the most positive feature that attracts you to using this form of finance. And just as an afterthought, will it depend on something? So pause the video now, have a little bash at that. You know I'm going to check it on Monday, so try and do your best. If you don't think that you can fit it in that box, there's plenty of space below. Okay, now I realised that after I'd written this PowerPoint, Mr. Carlin told me that he'd been using the BLT because leads to, therefore. So I'm going to say this is another alternative to this. But if you want to go with the BLT and you've got that baconless and tomato sandwich in your mind, I'm quite favourable for you having that. But if you didn't, and you were looking for something that you think you would perhaps like to use as an alternative, you can use because it depends on leads to. Now, a lot of students, when I say two consequences in relation to the overdraft, consequences can be positive or negative. A lot of students fall under this misconception that a consequence has to be a negative thing. So it doesn't naturally happen like that. You need to be thinking about what the case study is. And you know, in this short response here, I'm going to ask you, have you made sure that you've used some of the case study? So have you gone back to the story page of Packed Munches and used something? So again, pause your video now, write your answer. When you think you've done that, I want you to have a little look at the following page. So it's really, I've written it more in the style of how it might appear in the question. So remember, your syllabus might say, explain the benefits to Fiona's business of obtaining a bank overdraft, or it might say the word analyse the benefits. And you can see here that I've gone straight to the points. Before you perhaps put pen to paper, I'm going to take you through another example from a case study that we've done a few weeks ago. So the day that we did the sponsored walk, we used a case study called the BMX box. Now, I haven't let you take these yet, but if you would like to refresh yourself of the case study, you could go to that silver cupboard at the back of the room and you will find those case studies on the third shelf, and they're, I think, at the top, and they've got your name on them, or they might be the second pile, but they're definitely in there. But if you decide to use this today, please put it back in the cupboard so I know it's there for future lessons. So this was another question using a very small amount of data. And remember, Lee's idea, we used it for, he didn't have very good primary market research, and his secondary market research was not it was negligible. It wasn't the best. So here I've used this in an older style question, but it says analyse 2 benefits. But we know if it just said analyse the benefits, you have to give more than one, to the BMX box of arranging a £10,000 overdraft. So you might be thinking to yourself, why is it a river, and why is there some stepping stones in it? You might recognise this from County Durham. The examiner who wrote this actually lives in that area, and he likes to use this to try and encourage students to write small chunks and to build up your argument. So one of the ways that we've done this is the bacon and lettuce and the tomato makes a sandwich. Without it, it wouldn't be very meaty, or it wouldn't be very salady, if you want to say that. But it's to try and make you think about more than one things. So I referred to this case study, and you can see how I'm going to build it up. So the first point I might make is that the nature of selling bikes. So remember, Lee was the owner of BMX Box. And so one of the arguments I'm going to say is because Lee needs to carry high levels of stock in order to satisfy demand. And I know that demand will be a term that you've just covered with Mr. Carlin. And remember, it's customers in demand. Now, here's my because. So you've got my first B. Customers expect to be able to go into a BMX Box and buy what they need on the same day. Think about the nature of the product. So I'm going with therefore is my next connected. A large amount of Lee's money will be tied up in stock, meaning that an overdraft may be needed to enable Lee to buy new stock, especially at Christmas when demand for BMX is likely to increase. Now, hardly any of that argument came from the case study. I just simply tried to think about when people bought bikes. And I thought, because this case study had talked specifically about BMXs, and I thought the target market is bound to be young teenage boys. I'm pretty sure I can easily say that. And so what do they get? When do they get a bike? Well, birthdays are drip fed over the year, but I think I'm going to get a big fluctuation of bike sales in December or late November, and you could actually remember that. I'm sure some of you'll have had a bike for Christmas, and you can see how that's associated to Lee. So now if I think you could almost copy some of these arguments, so because and therefore, BLT. Well, I've got a leads to, but I didn't see that I could fit leads to, but I've used meaning that and especially. Now, those are connectives that I've never ever spoken about before. So pause the video now and have a little go to analyse the benefits to Fiona's business of obtaining a bank overdraft. If you need to score out any of them things, I don't mind, or if you want to use that as a starting point, that's even better. So this is just a reminder to go back, use the case study from Fiona's Packed Munchies and try that question. Okay, so for the next part, you'll need to get the 2-sheet handout that I gave to you earlier in the week. And remember what I said, that it really should be side by side, and actually question 1's on the back page if you look for it. So this is a case study. It came from Dragon's Den a couple of years ago now. It was a young entrepreneur who'd had a problem with his artwork, and so he decided that he would create this product called Foldio. So I'm just going to ask you now to look at the question and answers in relation to this case study. Okay, so if you see question 1, the question asks you, explain 2 reasons why Christian used venture capital as a source of finance. So the reason that I've asked you to do this primarily is because a lot of students quite often throw venture capitalists as the answer to a problem. And often it's not really the kind of answer that we're looking for. So I'm going to give you a few minutes here. First of all, to try and go and find a definition for venture capital, but just to try and have a little recap. So remember, there's usually an element of risk in a business in order for venture capitalists to invest. As well as investing money, they will usually be able to invest some business help, so help in decision making, because they'll be experienced and proven entrepreneurs. One of the downsides of venture capitalists is that they usually ask for a proportion of your business. So if you think your business is going to generate high profits in the future and really take off, you might actually be giving away more than it's really worth. So the questions that we're going to answer is explain 2 reasons why Christian used venture capitalists as a source of finance. So you can see then, I've given you a much shorter option here, but I would like you to have a go. So it's 1 reason and then another reason. So it's got to be associated to Christian and his folio. Have a look at which dragon offered him the money and what his problem is, and why getting finance from a venture capitalist might be the absolute best solution. So just to give you a bit of support here, because I think it is a really good, I think it is a difficult source of finance here. Here are some suggested answers. So stop the video, annotate your work. What could you have had in? What didn't you have in? Think about why didn't you have it in? What can you learn for next time? Now, I want to see if someone fell into the trap. So when you get a question that says 2 reasons why Christian used venture capitalist, I know that students are so tempted to think, oh, I actually need to give you a downside of using venture capitalists. And really, apart from the fact you won't answer the question, and you know I'm going to annotate it, NAQ, not answering the question, you've wasted your valuable time in answering that can't be used. So another skill that we're trying to develop is the importance of reading the question. Okay, so we're almost there. We're on the second question of this. So now I'm posing the question, state 3 problems that Christian may face in relation to accepting Theo's offer. So Theo's our dragon, Christian's our entrepreneur. Now I've written state. So realistically, I'm writing 1 quick line. So I'd like you to have a little go now at trying to write 3 lines. You might have to expand a little bit, I'll say. You won't have to explain. It's really in quite short detail. Okay, so I looked through the question and answers, and I found 3 problems. And you'll see there that a lot of these have almost been copied or lifted from the answer. Okay, so our final evaluation part. Do you think Christian made the right or the wrong answer? Now, obviously, we're not going to have that in the exam, but it'll say, evaluate Christian's decision, justify your view. So I'm offering you the choice. Remember, do you think he's made the right decision? I'm using the question. That's the most important thing. I'm leading the examiner to think of reasons. So I need to have the word because. That says it's got to be supported. So what about it? What essential thing? It could be a combination of lots of things, but what is the one main reason that he made the right or the wrong description? So I've written you an examiner's tip. Make a judgment. Justify it. Say why. I believe this because, and make sure you use the case study before turning the slide to get what I think might be an answer. Okay, so a student here had a little go, and you know I'm going to ask you, right? That probably definitely wouldn't have fitted in the box, but I think that's a really, really good answer. So the question was, to what extent, I've turned it into an exam question, do you agree with his decision? So have a little read, and then I want you to think, do you think it's reasonable? Or do you think it's good evaluation? And I'm just going to say that because I know these are not double-sided, I want you to turn over these little worksheets and I want you to write evaluation. Is this reasonable or good? I want you to pick which one it is and I want you to justify why. Okay, so just in case you're having a moment, I'm going to say this is good application, good evaluation. Sorry, I have my skills wrong. It's good evaluation. Now you need to decide, why is it good? If you want, you could copy it out. You could get your highlighter out and you could look at, well, how much did he use of the case study? Where's his judgment? Where's he used the word because, or which word did he show, or combination of words to show that this is the most valuable point of the answer?